Hello and welcome to the Inkandescent Health and Wellness Show. I'm Hope Katz-Gibbs, founder of Inkandescent and your host. Today I am thrilled to introduce you to our guest Don Mann, a former member of Team 6 who in the years since has become an internationally renowned endurance athlete and a New York Times bestselling author. Don has changed countless lives by sharing his reaching beyond boundaries philosophy, perhaps most eloquently in a trilogy of books he published this year, Overcoming Obstacles, Choosing Your Battles, and Facing Your Fears. Given that we are about solid 6 months into the COVID-19 pandemic, the country is being ravaged by hurricanes and firestorms, and the 2020 election is polarizing the nation on a daily basis. So I can't imagine a better time to be talking to Don about one of my favorite of his books called Face Your Fears. So welcome, Don.
Oh, hello, Hope. It's nice to be here with you.
Well, thank you. So tell us where you are this morning.
Well, right now I'm at my house. I live in Cape Charles, Virginia, and I'm sitting in my office and looking out at the water, and I'm looking forward to going paddling later on.
Awesome. Yes, forever fit. And I am in Las Cruces, New Mexico. It's a little earlier here. It's around 8 a.m., so forgive me for being bleary-eyed. But I'm really excited to have you on the show and to talk about your career. So who grows up to be a Navy SEAL? Tell us about your background. Take us back to childhood.
Okay. For some reason, I wasn't a very good child, and I didn't really have any direction, and I really wasn't going anywhere fast. And but I did know I had to find something very exciting to do in life. I knew that. That's the only thing I really knew. And so we moved around a lot. And when we'd move, the first thing I would do from second grade onward would go out as far as I could in the neighborhood and try to find my way home. And when I got a little older, I went in the woods as far as I could, just by myself, to try to find my way home. And I did that growing up, and I'd watch TV shows, and I would be excited about police chases and the military scenes. And I just I knew I had to do something very exciting. And I did get in a bit of trouble when I was a kid, just because directionless, and I liked motorcycles, and I was chased by the police quite a bit because I was too young to ride them on the roads. And then one day I told my dad, I'm going to go join the Marine Corps. And he was a World War II veteran, and he was so proud. He said, I'd be very proud of you if you join the Marines. In other words, it's about time you do something right, you know. And I went to the Marine recruiter, and for some reason, I probably met the only Marine recruiter who wasn't that squared away. And I was just a kid, and I didn't know any better, but I wasn't impressed by him. So I went next door to the Navy recruiter, thinking my father would like it if I go to the Navy, because my father was in the Navy. And he told me about the SEAL teams, and that second, I knew that's what I wanted. He showed me a video of all these guys running down the beach in San Diego in the soft sand and diving and blowing things up and shooting and doing pull-ups and push-ups and sit-ups and going all over the world. Sorry about that, it's my alarm. And going all over the world. And I knew then that that's what I wanted to do. And then I was positive I found a direction of what I wanted. And that's what made me want to be a SEAL. And then it was nice because I didn't have a secondary plan. Only thing I wanted was to be a SEAL. So I gave everything to being a SEAL. And so that was a long time ago. And then after I retired, I put on quite a few SEAL training programs for people who wanted to be SEALs. And I wrote books on how to become a SEAL. And that recruiter changed my whole life. And if I hadn't found him, I am pretty sure I wouldn't have gone anywhere in life. And so I was very grateful, and I benefited from meeting him a great deal.
That's amazing. A couple of things for context. First of all, how old were you when you met him?
I was 18.
And where were you living at the time?
In Connecticut, New Haven, Connecticut. Well, he was in New Haven, Connecticut, the recruiting station was, but I was next door in Orange, Connecticut.
Okay. So, and do you remember his name? Give him a shout out.
I do. Diamond Jim Brady. He had a really crisp uniform with nice seams and everything. And it said Jim Brady, and he said, you can call me Diamond Jim Brady. I'll never forget. I have no idea what the Marine recruiter's name was, but I remember that Navy recruiter, Diamond Jim Brady.
Wow. Have you had any contact with him?
No, never.
Yeah, well,
No.
it's amazing how people can change your life, just like you've changed lives. So you kind of glossed over like the whole, like several decades of important work. So tell us about what it's like to be a Navy SEAL, because it's got so much, pomp and circumstance to it, and it seems like a very scary but important job. So fill us in.
Okay, to want to be a SEAL, you have to know you're going to risk your life a lot. And basically, every day after training, we would hold up a drink of beer and say, "Hey, we cheated death once again." And you do have friends who get killed, and you do have friends who get wounded. And but one thing everybody has in common, some of them might be very Christian people, church-going people, and that's what their life revolves around and being a Christian. And some are hardcore bikers who like the biker bars and the fights, and some are athletes. But regardless of what else they do, besides being a SEAL, the one thing all SEALs have in common is they really have a really strong desire to give everything to to being a SEAL, and and it's not afraid of going to war and facing off with the enemy and skydiving at 30,000 feet and doing all these other things we always did. We had calculated risk taking and risk takers. So we knew everything was a risky thing, but we weighed it out. And everybody had that ability to do that, to face these fears, like the book that you mentioned, Facing Your Fears. We all had the ability to look at something very, very, might be frightening to others and think it's worth it. And I know all the safety precautions involved and facing this fear and looking up at this event that's going to be very, very fearful and dangerous. But we calculate the risk, and we consider ourselves calculated risk takers.
Do
And
you
that helped a lot.
do you feel like because you're so prepared that it shifts, and is that one of the lessons, one of the takeaways from the book that you want people to have, is that you can be afraid, but if you're prepared, then it becomes a different experience.
Oh, perfectly said. I hope that was perfect what you just said. Yeah, that is what I believe. For instance, if you're going up to do these hey-ho jumps, a high altitude, high opening jumps, and you have an oxygen mask on, and you have goggles on, and you have a weapon here, and an oxygen tank, and a GPS, and you're going out in the middle of the night at 30,000 feet, so many things can go wrong. And actually, they did go wrong with me once, and twice actually. But those things do go wrong, but you know exactly if you have an entanglement, what to do. If your chute collapses, what you do. If you don't have an opening, what you do. If you have a downwind landing, how to correct that before you hit the ground at 60 miles an hour. So, and you don't even have to think about it, because on the plane, you're thinking, okay, I'm going to do this if that happens. But once you jump out and you pull that parachute, you're confident knowing anything that goes wrong, you can handle it. And if it's something that's beyond you being able to handle it, that's just the way it is. And you can't do anything about that. But everything that could go wrong that's preventable or correctable, you know how to handle that. And we do know there are some situations where some things you just can't handle. And I always put those in a box. Well, I can't do anything about that. And that's like this coronavirus. I can't do anything about the coronavirus, but I know how to handle it, because I just assume anybody I talk to might have it. So I protect myself, regardless of what all the politicians are going back and forth saying. I just protect myself. And I assume I might have it. I know I don't, but I assume, I pretend like I have it so I don't spread it to anybody. And I wash and purify my hands all day long. And I just stay pretty much isolated, which is how I am anyways. I just see a few of the same people all the time. And so there is a fear that, I could get this virus. I had a lung problem when I climbed Everest. I got a really bad lung infection that almost killed me. So I'm prone to getting it. So I just, it's a fear when I go out there, but I take all the safety precautions. It's a calculated risk when I go out there. And I just look at it that way.
Makes perfect sense. So tell us, give us some good stories. In the book, Facing Your Fears, you talk about a mission that sounded pretty darn scary. Were you on that mission that you described?
One of the missions that was pretty scary that I mentioned was when we were captured in the Middle East. And they told us they were going to shoot us and kill us and shoot us in the backs. And it was a sequence of events. Everything kept going wrong. And there were 4 of us on this mission. And just before the mission, we were up in northern Africa with our counterparts, and we were eating snakes and poisonous snakes and frogs. And you kill the snake or the frog on your boot, and then you take them and you peel the skin back. And the venomous snakes, you take the venom out, the venom sacs out, then you eat it. And we did that, so the 4 of us got food poisoning, no doubt. But we got sick. And then we had to go to this mission that nobody knew we were doing up in northern Africa. We flew down to southern Africa to a war zone area, and we did a parachute jump with a rubber boat. We call it a rubber ducky. And the 4 of us jumped out and landed next to the boat, and there were sharks everywhere because the Arabs that were killing all the camels nearby, they would put the intestines and the innards of the camels in the water. So sharks were always in there. So we're afraid of the sharks, for one. So we tried to get in that rubber boat as quickly as we could. None of us said we were afraid, but we were all afraid. It was in the middle of the night. And then we were going to an enemy beach after getting out of that boat. And we took the motorboat up to about 500 yards, and we looked at the beach for a couple hours. We didn't see any enemy activity. Then we came up about 200 yards to the beach. And then myself and my buddy had to go back in that water, swim to the beach, and find a place where we could hide out for 3 days. But we were sick as could be. We were so sick from that food poisoning we had. And we called the boat over. It was just like a little finger of land with water on 3 sides, and there wasn't a good place to hide out. So we called the boat over, and we dug a hole in the sand, in the desert, and we put camouflage netting over our heads. So the 4 of us were sitting in a hole, and we had long beards and long hair, and we had goggles on because it was a bad sandstorm. We buried all our other stuff in another hole. So we just had to hide in that hole for 3 days and taking pictures of the airplanes and the jets and the ships and the ship traffic. And we'd just taken notes for 3 days, hiding out. And everybody was thrown up and had diarrhea. And you couldn't leave the hole. You had to do it in the hole. And then I got IVs in the other 3 guys as a medic. So I was able to get IVs in those 3 guys. And they tried getting one in me, and they just caused like 20 holes in my arm that all got infected. And they never got an IV in me. So for 3 days, we were as sick as could be, living in our own sewage, basically, because every high tide, the water came up to our necks, and we were in our own sewage because we couldn't leave to farm or to go to the bathroom. And we're still just sitting there with our heads down and the goggles on, and our noses filled with sand and our ears filled with sand. And then on the 3rd day, we had the netting over our heads, but on the 3rd day, one of the locals came walking by in the middle of the desert, and his eyes got bigger and bigger and bigger as he looked down at this hole with camouflage netting, but he saw 4 people there with weapons pointed up. And he mumbled something and he ran off. So we knew we got compromised. We got caught. And so we tried to get out of there quickly. But we had the other hole with the motorboat in it and the motor and all that. And as we're trying to get out of that hole, still, this is 3 days without eating and vomiting and sick as can be with food poisoning. And we're so weak and tired, but we knew we had to get out of there. And it was nighttime. And before we can get out, that one guy who ran back to the village brought 14 of his buddies back. And they all had AK-47s. They all had their fingers on the trigger, and they're pointing it to our heads and our chest. We put our hands up, and they circle around us. And I was thinking, like mindset, you always think positively, is they're not going to shoot us, because if they shoot at us, the bullets will go through us and into the other teammates of theirs. They won't do that. But we think like that. They don't think like that necessarily. But they were scared to death. They were just kids, too, like 17, 18-year-old kids with their fingers on the trigger. And then one of them, who could speak a little broken English, was saying, "Down, down. We shoot you in the backs for trespassing." We said, "No, we're going to go," and we tried to explain this in English. They didn't really understand the word we were saying. But we're going back in this boat to the United States. They said, "Down, down, down. We shoot you in the backs." They held us at gunpoint overnight. And then somebody went back to a village to get someone who could speak better English. And they said, you trespassed. People who trespass here, the penalty is we kill you. We said, no, that's not going to happen. We didn't have weapons on us or anything. They were down because we're trying to undig the hole where the boat was. So we had one person with a weapon up, and that one person could have started firing at all 14 of these guys, or we would have been slaughtered. And finally, a long story short, they let us go. They let us go. We went back out to sea as sick as could be, came back around and finished the mission. We won and they lost. And what I was so happy about with that, as bad as it was, is with the sharks and the food poisoning and being captured and being told we're going to be shot in the back, nobody complained that it was a bad day at the office, a bad day in the job. Nobody complained. Nobody said, oh, I should have been a pilot, or I should have been a cook or something. We were all so happy to be there with each other. We all thought the same, that we're going to get out of this. And we just had a positive attitude, and we got out of it. And then we went around and finished the job. So it was a good experience all in all for us, not so much for them.
You think that some people are just built differently, like, because most people will be like, I'm never doing that again. But are you trained, or is it just a different kind of emotional makeup, physical makeup that you can, like, that sounds like fun, or maybe not fun, but that sounds like, okay, I did it, I can do it again.
I think everybody has that in them. And I look back at the Holocaust and POWs, prisoners of war, and they have young girls, young boys, and who get out when they're older, and now you have these old people in the 80s and 90s, and they lived through much, much, much worse than that. And there was a Holocaust survivor in San Diego, and she used to say, she's a little old lady, and she had the tattoo on her arm and everything. And she'd say, it was all a mindset. It's all in your mindset, positive mindset. She said, well, they do make you work hard, but I like hard work. The only thing I didn't like, they just don't feed you enough. And that's all she had negative to say about being a POW, or, a Nazi Holocaust victim who could die any day. And I think it's just your attitude. If you have a real positive attitude, and like you said earlier, if you're trained to prepare for contingencies and trained for the worst, nothing is as bad as what those people had, right? So the things I've been involved with are just fun and games compared to so many of those people.
Yeah, there's so many atrocities going on still in the world. It's amazing, of course, and we're just dealing with it. But to your point, it's how you look at it, right? So take us back to how you developed this incredibly positive mindset.
I don't know how it's developed actually, but I do know, tracing things back to 7th grade, I do know no matter what, I'm going to work out every day. I don't know where that came from. I just knew that was going to be my life, fitness. And I'd take that to some career somewhere. I was just positive I would do that. And then when I started doing the long competitions, I immediately just thought I'll do the toughest ones in the world. And I don't know where that came from, because my family didn't have, endurance athletes in my family. And this was before I was a SEAL. So it didn't come from the SEALs. Somehow I just knew, like, for instance, a 100-mile run or a 500-mile race out in the desert or something. Why can't I just put one leg in front of the other? But I can say, Hope, I didn't always think like that. I would initially get to these big, big races, and I would look to my sides, and I'd see all these very, very fit people and all muscular and all that. And I'd get so intimidated thinking, these guys, they're faster, they're stronger, they've done so much more than this. Who do I think I am trying to compete with these people? And I was always intimidated. But the stronger my mindset got, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to do my best to keep up with these people. And then my mind, not necessarily my body, but my mind kept getting stronger. And then I was thinking, I'm going to do everything I can to beat these people. And then it got so strong as I'm going to give everything I have, to the point of bonking, hallucinating, or passing out, or bleeding, to beat these people. And then, so I started hurting myself because my mind got very, very powerful. And I started thinking for decades, I'm not giving it enough unless I hallucinate, bleed, or pass out. And that caused me some physical damage by pushing myself too hard. When I say physical damage, I'm understating that because I almost died twice because my liver and kidneys shut down and I was in the hospital, and it was from pushing too hard for too long. And I always used to train people like that, SEALs and people wanting to be SEALs and adventure athletes. Like, no, you have a lot more in you. You have to keep going. And but now I think differently. I think a little bit smarter now because I'd always push myself and others to go over the line. Where if you go over the line, something's going to go wrong. Your relationship might fail. You're not giving enough attention to your home. Home issues might start developing. You might start having body problems. And in my case, all of that happened. But so now I understand clearly that that was a mistake, the way I used to think about pushing yourself. But now I think there still is that imaginary line. And I always wanted to go over it. And I believed if I started hallucinating, bleeding, or passing out, I went over it and I gave it my all. Because I didn't want to leave anything on the table. I want to give everything I had. But now I think just go up. You have to know where that line is. Go up and touch it, then back off. So you don't do damage to yourself. And that's, I believe, the best lesson I've ever learned is backing off. And I did 2 Ironmans in one day once. And an Ironman is 2.4 mile swim and 112 mile bike ride and 26.2 mile marathon. But I did 2 in one day. And, I finished, I got out of the water. I'm thinking, not so bad. Now I have 224 miles of biking to do. And this was in outside of Richmond, by the way. This was in Lake Anna, Virginia. And so did 224 miles of biking. I'm thinking now all I have left, because my mindset is 2 marathons. So what? 2 marathons. But one leg in front of the other, I'm going to finish this thing. I did 1 marathon. I only had 1 marathon left to go, which at one time in my life, a marathon was a big deal. But now it's just a small part of 2 Ironmans. But at mile 32, I started seeing white spots, like lack of oxygen. And I started dry heaving a bit. And I started coughing up some bile. And it was coming out of my mouth. And I started getting lightheaded. Then I passed out. And I was on the lawn there. And I woke up. And I wasn't out for long. But I woke up. I saw some cyclists and runners going by. And I wondered why I was outside sleeping. And I realized I was in a double Ironman. And I got up and wiped off my face and finished the run and got the medal and all that. And I realized then that all the times before that, if I thought, oh, I feel so bad for myself, it hurts so much, I got to quit or I got to slow down, I was wrong. Because if you're actually in too much pain, your body will do you a favor. You'll pass out and you get the sleep you need and the rest you need. So I always knew that I could keep going if I was conscious. Now I still have that same attitude. I just came back last summer doing a 750 mile paddle across Canada. It was a reality TV show. And I was the oldest guy there. Actually, I think I was older than the rest of their parents. And there were only 10 of us. And we didn't see any people. We saw a lot of bears. And then I was thinking, we only have 2 tents. I don't need a tent. I can sleep outside for, I think, 4 weeks or whatever it was. So I just slept out under the stars every night. And one time I went into the woods to use the bathroom and a black bear followed me back. But that mindset has helped me out my whole life and everything I've done and do. I'm not going to stop doing it either.
Yeah. Well, it's the life you choose to live. And there's something about that, right? What is the big takeaway for others who don't have quite they aren't built the way you are?
Well, and I realize what I'm saying sounds extreme, and it is extreme, really. But for the life I chose, it's helped being a SEAL and an adventure athlete and all that. But the same concept and the same mindset, I think, can work for an artist, a piano player, or a banker. That you can, and I do these talks around the country, and a lot of people come up from all walks of life, and I'll hear from them sometimes 1, 2, 5, 10, 15 years later that mindset has helped them in whatever they do. Because I did realize, Hope, when I got out of the military and I retired from the SEALs, and I loved every second of it. But when I got out, I realized that a lot of people will set goals. I'm all about goal setting, but set high goals. I realize a lot of people do set goals and they have goals and they set them low and they achieve them and they go home and they're happy. And they don't really give a whole lot from themselves. And I like to say that I think the real tragedy in life is not that people set their goals too high and they don't achieve them. I think the real tragedy, a lot of people set goals low and they achieve them and they're satisfied with that. Because if you could picture a triangle and goals set too low at the bottom, and then a big empty space here, and then full potential at the top, that big empty space doesn't get filled by a lot of people, and the full potential's out of reach because they're just happy with the low goal setting. I chose to go beyond what I could reach, and reaching beyond boundaries is the message I give, and just go beyond. And sometimes, quite a few times, I don't make it, but I try. And even if I can't make it up here, at least I get to here, which I wouldn't have ever made if I didn't try to get up higher. So I think if you're a piano player or an artist, anything, you can probably, I think most people can give a lot more. Don't give too much because you'll go over the line. Something bad could start happening and then back off. But I did notice that when I got out of the military. Most people in the civilian world, I wonder why they could be satisfied without trying more, trying harder in whatever they chose to do. And that could be as a mother or a sister or a father or a brother. Why can't I give more as a father? Why can't I give more when I'm out taking care of my lawn? I mean, people, I think, can give a lot more than a lot of people actually give because they're happy with just a low standard of the goals they set.
Do you think they're happy with it, or do you think that that's what they think they can achieve? How do you accomplish the things that your soul is here to accomplish?
I think they'd be happier if they achieved more. And I think they'd be happier with something that's difficult and they do it and they go, my God, I got that done. That feels so good. Rather than, yeah, I check the box. Okay, let me just finish this thing here and I go home. I don't think there's a good feeling about that. And they're probably somewhat satisfied, but they could be a lot more satisfied if they put a little more into it, I believe.
Well, it seems like the real thing is potential, right? What is your potential? What are you here to do? And that's the work that Inkandescent, that my company does. We're trying to get people to realize that they can accomplish more than maybe they thought they could, to have that faith and belief in themselves. And that's why you're such a great role model for all of us. Tell us in your own personal life, like you've achieved remarkable things. You just outlined just a handful of what you have done. But what is it that kind of got you there? Do you think it's just an internal motivation, or do you think it's something that can be taught and learned?
I think both. I think I looked up to people. I still do. I look up to people. And I think it's internal, but it's internal for me. I think it's internal for everybody. I think we all have it. But for me, it helped by looking up to people who are really, really exceptional in what they do as athletes or really almost any profession. I just look up to people. I love music. And that's how I like to relax, watch old rock and roll videos, really good, what I think is really good music. And I watch them and I say, how did they write that music? Look at that, listen to that voice, and look how they play those instruments. And I get inspired by a great musician when I go to do some athletic event. I think of how great that song sounded, how much work they put into it. And look what those people did with their careers and their energy. I have energy too, and I could put it toward whatever I'm doing. So I look at all types of people and get inspired by them if they try really hard and have done great things. Even, okay, I have to correct what I just said. Even people who haven't achieved great things, if they go out there and they're just working hard and they're working for their family and they're providing for their family, doing everything they can for their family, and have a nice little tiny home, but that home it's set up for them and their family, and they're doing everything they can. I respect those people and inspired by those people a great deal. So I think it's just effort. And you said potential. To me, I I think most of us don't know our full potential because I think that space doesn't get really fulfilled, and the full potential might be at the tip of that triangle. And unless you think you could, unless you go out and think you could reach up higher and put more effort into something, you're not going to have a clue what that full potential is. I don't believe.
Yeah. I find myself wanting to ask you two layers of questions. First, I want to know more about yourself, but I also, and your career and how you've got all your books, like you've written so many of them and they're really interesting. And you have a co-writer, which is really cool. I'd love to know a little bit about that. So it's a personal biography that I'd like to know, but I feel compelled to ask you this question now about how do you apply that to where we are in the world, right? So it's September 8th, 2020, where we're in the morning, you and I are having this conversation on opposite sides of the country, which is very cool about technology. We're in the middle of this pandemic that seems to be kind of going, no one really knows what's happening. I hear tons of mixed messages in that the political scene is really pretty awful. And it's very polarized. Economics, like today, the stock market fell again, it was up, it's down, tech stocks are dominating. So given what you know, what you believe in, potential and doing the best you can, hitting the line, but not going over it, where are we as a humanity, as a global population, and where do you see us going?
Well, I think I'm kind of looking at, if we're talking the virus and keeping the politics out of it, of course, um, we just happen to be, it's a virus that hit us, maybe once every 100 years, something like this will happen. And it hit us and we're going to get over it. Um, and there could be a lot of problems between now and then. And we've, of course, lost so many lives. And there's going to be many more lives lost. But we just happen to be on this earth at this time when this virus came. And I don't let the politics get to me. I think it's really selfish that they can use a virus as a political means to try to make points. I think it's a terrible thing for both sides to do that. And it makes it so people don't trust either side. And I think that's terrible. So just look at it, politics aside, and just common sense and look at it. I think as a country, I can say this, I've been all over the world, and there's never a country that I'll go visit or work at that I like better than the United States. And we have our problems. It's so polarized, like you said, but so much worse in so many other places. I mean, I was just in Jamaica, and everybody there is so excited about Bob Marley still. But Bob Marley did something, and I'll bring it back to music. Bob Marley did something in his country where his right and left wing parties, they were shooting at each other. Not just the people on the streets. I mean, the parties were shooting at each other. And Bob Marley got a nick on his arm because they thought he was going to support one party. And what he did, he took the leader of the right, the leader on the left, and brought them both on stage. And they thought for sure, but he was so courageous to do that. And it really brought the country tighter together. But I bring that up because the English Parliament, British Parliament, they're at each other's throats way worse than the United States is. And there are a lot of places in the world where they're killing each other over politics, and it's nothing new. It's happened since politics have started. But we are very polarized, and I really see we have two types of people in this country now, and I see it. I mean, we have people who think on the right and people who think on the left, and there's no gray in the middle. I mean, it's unbelievable. But it's like that in a lot of other countries too. So I don't think we're any worse. But you know what was interesting? I met some people from New Zealand, and we started talking about politics. And they said, we believe your left wing of your party is too far right. So it was shocking to hear that. And they, not the socialism part of the far left, but they think our left wing is too right radical. So it's funny how other countries can view us. Oh, and then I've talked to other countries like, can't believe what you guys are letting happen on your streets. We would stomp on that so quickly. So other countries view us differently. Some, on both sides. I think we're worse than probably ever. I think President Trump has it harder now than any president besides Abraham Lincoln because of the division in the country. Abraham Lincoln had the country divided in two, basically. And I think that's kind of happening to our country. But, I think in big picture, I remember I was around with Nixon and Kennedy. There's a little bit of difference between those two. And then Carter and Reagan, there was a bigger difference between the two. But the pendulum would swing a little left, come a little right. And then with Bush's and the Clintons, it swung a little bit left, a little more right. And now with Trump and Biden, they couldn't be more opposite. So I think the pendulum's swinging further right and further left. And what I think will happen if President Trump loses this time, it's going to go left, of course. And then that pendulum, people will be so unhappy, the right conservatives will be so unhappy it's going to go further right than what President Bush has it. I'm sorry, President Trump has it. So I think that pendulum's swinging further and further left and right. It used to be just a little bit of a gap, the difference between the two parties. Now it's huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
And as
So,
you know,
given the landscape that we're living in right now and your mindset, your positive mindset, it sounds like what you do is you separate yourself from what's going on around you and focus. And I'm going to pull this away from politics. So what is it that people can do to stay sane kind of in these crazy times?
I think take it all with a grain of salt, let it go off your shoulder a little bit, not to get wrapped up with these people just politicizing everything, and enjoy all the great things about our country, and just go outdoors and turn all that noise off and enjoy life and be with friends and family. And if you just stay focused on that, yeah, this world's terrible, this country's terrible, our president's terrible, everything's terrible. If that's what you focus on, that's just a small bit of our world. I mean, there's so much more out there. I really feel so refreshed when I'm around people who say, "Oh, yeah, I don't follow the news. What's going on?" No, I'm not like that. I like to know what's happening, so I do follow it, but I don't let it get to me at all. I don't get frustrated. I think this is just that pendulum swinging. It's going further that way and coming back that way. I don't know how it's ever going to get fixed. I don't know. I think maybe it's going to get so bad on both sides. Maybe as a collective consciousness our country might have is let's settle down and come back to the center somewhere. But that's just a hope.
That would be a good hope. Yeah, sanity. So it sounds like potential and perspective are two of the big tenets that you live by and that you encourage other people to live by. So let's now go to that bio piece that I'm curious about as well. So you started writing books after you left the SEALs. What year was that?
1998.
And so what inspired you to start writing about all of this?
Well, nothing at all. I didn't want to write a book. But I was doing these 500 and 600 mile long adventure races. And then a lot of people would always ask, "Hey, can you teach me how to do these things?" So I started training people all on weekends. And then I started putting on small adventure races around the country. Then I had this adventure racing academy where people would come through. And then I'd put on these 21 events around the country year round. And his name's Quinton Kidd. He was a politician from Virginia. And he said to me one day, he said, "Hey, Don, you're the only person who teaches adventure racing. You compete at the highest level and you produce these races all over the country. Why don't you write a book on adventure racing?" I said, "Quinton, I don't want to write a book." And he said, "You should write a book." I said, "I don't want to write a book. I don't want to be inside on a computer." So he said, "If you do it on tape, on a cassette, and just talk," which is what I did. I had all these 3x5 cards and I just spoke. And I sent it into him and then to this writer from Chicago Sun-Times, Cara Sharp. She typed it all up. I sent him some photos, and that was the first book of adventure racing written. So I was thinking that wasn't so bad. I had the easy part. All I had to do was talk, And then I was teaching shooting and tactics and weapons and defensive training for years for the U.S. government. And my boss came out and he saw my desk and I had all this literature on shotguns and long guns and pistols for defense, how to defend yourself and how to defend a world leader. That's who we were training. People who defended world leaders. And we stopped, we, not so much, but the people we trained stopped many times saving the lives of a world leader, stopped their world leaders from being killed from what we were doing. So we believe we're doing really, really good work. And when these world leaders and prime ministers and leaders of countries are killed, the countries go to terrorists and it just go to chaos, and lots of people get killed by one leader being killed. So we believe we're doing the right thing. And I went all over the world teaching people how to protect their own world leaders. And my boss said, you should write a book on shooting and tactics. I said, Jimmy, I don't want to do that. The last thing I want to do is write another book. He said, well, you got all the material here. So finally, another guy said, I'll send it to Skyhorse Publishing if you put it together in chapters. They said, well, you have too much material. If you get rid of the shotgun and the long gun stuff, we'll take the pistol defense. So that became a book that's widely used now by police and military. It's called Modern Day Gunslinger. And a lot of people, housewives and men and women who live at home alone, who feel a need to defend themselves at home, which is more and more all the time, that they're using that book for those purposes. So then I was thinking, 2 is all I want. And then I got a call from the Navy. They said, hey, the Army has a survival manual. The Marines have one. Coast Guard has one. Navy SEALs don't have a survival manual. Would you write a survival manual for the Navy SEALs? I said, no. I would have to do so much research. I'd have to do so much learning and educating myself on all the things I don't know. They said, well, we'll pay you up front. We'll give you an extra year to do it. So everything was, I was resistant about writing books. And then when bin Laden was killed, I was a training officer at SEAL Team 6, and SEAL Team 6 was the team that killed bin Laden. And they said, well, you were the training officer there. Let us know how you train those guys. I said, no, you don't talk about those things. They said, well, I mean, they went in there and they killed #1 terrorist in the world, and they didn't get a guy scratched. How does that happen? I said, we don't talk about those things. So then another publisher called. I said the same thing, and the publicist was saying, Don, you're turning down a lot of money. Every other people are out there talking. You should talk. I said, no, I still have top secret clearance. I'm not talking. And then a publisher called and they said, okay, we know what you're telling the others. How about just your military bio and your athletic bio? Would you give us that? And don't put anything that's classified or you feel sensitive about. I said, I'll do that. And I did it all by tape. I had a great co-author, Ralph Pizzulu, and he used to date Madonna. He's got a very colorful background. He's Meg Ryan's his best friend, and he goes to parties with Mick Jagger and Jack Nicholson and all these people. He's a great, great guy, and he's an incredible writer. So I did the same thing. He would ask me questions. I'd look at him, and I'd talk on a tape, and I'd send it to him. And that became a New York Times bestseller. And then I had this idea about Forrest Gump. I was thinking, Forrest Gump, a fictional character, but he taught us history. You know, his girlfriend Jenny died of AIDS, and the ping pong championship in Vietnam and Nixon and Watergate. He gave us a good history lesson. I could probably do the same thing with maybe a SEAL or maybe a CIA guy who goes through history, what's going on. And so I suggested that to my publisher. He said, yeah, let's do a book on that, a novel, it's fiction. But then that became an 8-part series. So everything was like an accident. It wasn't planned. And it was a fun process. You know, I just finished book number 20. And my English teacher would be rolling over in her grave if she thought I even read a book. But it's been fun. And boy, when people ask how to write a book, it's not that difficult, really. Because for me, my background in writing and reading was not what a lot of people have as far as backgrounds, because I didn't pay that much of attention in school when those topics were taught. So if you believe in something, you know a lot about something, you want to write about it, if you have a really good co-author, the two of you can agree, see head to head on eye to eye, it's a really enjoyable process.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's fun.
Yeah, well, Inkandescent has a publishing company, and we totally appreciate you saying such a thing, because, you know, it's pulling, I always say I'll interview the book out of you, you know, because everyone has a book in them. I truly believe that, you know, that not that they can write it, but that it's the story, and that's what matters. It's what are you trying to communicate? So I applaud you, and how cool, like you are a rock star clearly in so many ways.
Oh,
Well,
I love the way you do that. You did that with one of my books, Facing Your Fears, and you did such a great job of pulling out what mattered in that book, the things that really mattered. I
well,
really love the way you do that. The way you do that.
and that's our cover story in the September 2020 issue of Incandescent Health and Wellness magazine at beincandescent.com. But I'm not finished. You have not just books, but you're doing TV stuff. You have a clothing line. Tell us how we can keep track of you.
Okay, the clothing line's just starting, and it's called Neptune Athletics, and it's basically based off my book Reaching Beyond Boundaries, and which is a message, and so is Facing Your Fears and Choosing Your Battles. Those are messages. But I'm working with a couple in Florida, really nice guy. He's a tennis pro, and his girlfriend Sam, they're engaged, and they wanted to start a clothing company using my message. So it's not just a nice outdoor piece of clothing; it has a message attached. So we've been working for about a year, and it's being launched probably next week or so. We were actually, the coronavirus is what slowed it down so much, and getting clothing made different places in the world. And so we have all that figured out, and now top tennis pros are wearing our clothing, and it's going to go on the market probably in the next couple of weeks. It's called Neptune Athletics, and it's just high-end adventure clothing for the gym or yoga or biking or swimming or anything, paddling if you wear a swim guard. We're just using it for all types of sports, but it's really high-end, designed by athletes. And that's the clothing line. And the TV show, it's called Surviving Man, like my last name, Mann. And a friend of mine is the one who created this, came up with this concept. He just wants me to take people and train them. And with the first one we're going to train is a lady from Modern Day's Housewives. And I feel bad, I've never seen that show, but the star of the show is going to be the first person I'll be training. And then there's an NBA player and an NFL player will be the second and third person. And basically the first series are going to be in a place called Concept Kinetics in Sterling, Virginia. And this place is incredible. Concept Kinetics, it looks like a warehouse from the outside. And when you go inside, my background was shooting and all that, you have a weapon and you go inside, it doesn't shoot bullets. And they designed the rooms upstairs, downstairs, multiple rooms, so there could be a dog here, a bad guy over here, a hostage over here, a refrigerator over here. You design it. So you walk in, say it's for you in your home, and you heard a burglar come in, and you have two choices: hide out in your bedroom and lock the door, or defend yourself with a weapon, is what this training is about. And so you come down, and every shot you take, you get 70 data points. Like, you missed, you hit here, you met here, you didn't have to shoot, you could have de-escalated, the person could have left the room and ran off. So the game that I named Sword and the Shield, the sword is the military who takes training overseas and takes the fight to the enemy, and they keep the fight over there. The shield are EMTs, our doctors, our police force, our fire department, people who defend us over here. So I came up with this thing called the Sword and the Shield Games. So they can do it in Sterling, Virginia at first, and they come through. It might be a housewife, might be an 18-year-old boy or girl who's at home, but they hear somebody breaking into their home. And how to take the next step rather than just call the police, which sometimes there is time for that call. So if, unfortunately, it'll never happen, but if it does happen to a person, it's not the first time they experience it. They go through this training called the Sword and the Shield. And then the TV show, Surviving Man, is taking celebrities through this type of training.
Wow.
So that's what I'm excited about working on now, those two things.
Or maybe
Those three things with mine.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic. So it sounds like your 3 Ps might be, will add perspective to potential. I mean, protection to potential and perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. It sounds like you have endless potential. And that anything that you kind of think you can do, you go for, and people come to you because they know that it's something really thought through. It's very impressive. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, Hope, thanks so much. And I'm so impressed by all you're doing, and it's great to connect with you and to be on your show. And I appreciate you inviting me.
My pleasure. Well, you all can read all about Don Mann, well, everywhere on the internet, on his website.
Oh, it's Dawn at
Don,
usfrogman.com. At
okay.
usfrogman2n.com.
US Frogman. We have to buy you that URL. It's the PR person in me. Don Mann. And he has this great clothing line, all these amazing books, and he has the cover story on the September 2020 issue of Inkandescent Health and Wellness magazine. Thank you, Don. We look forward to keeping up with all your amazing work, and we wish you only the best.